There we go. So good evening or good afternoon to those of you who are joining us from all around the world. I'm so excited and extremely sad that this is the final webinar tonight of our three-part series with Microsoft. I can't even say how much I have enjoyed the webinar series. It's been extremely insightful. I was just saying to Malavika before that I've been a user of Microsoft products for several years and I had no idea that there were so many features that were in fact free right there on my desktop this whole time. So, I mean, the first one that we did on the reading and writing tools, in particular, the views that we've had on the YouTube channel and the feedback, especially from schools and families and people throughout the UK in particular. We have a free community called the Operation Diversity Community on Facebook, and the feedback in there was amazing. Second session as well, there's just so many features. So thank you very much for joining us. This session tonight is focused on Microsoft 365. Our special guest tonight is Malavika Rewari, and she's a Senior Product Marketing Manager. Shall I hand over to you? Do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do within your role?
Sure, I'm excited to be here. I'm just recovering from a cold, so forgive me if you can't hear me quite clearly. I'm going to hope that these subtitles help you understand what I'm saying. I look after shaping our productivity and inclusion story. I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and I've learned so much from our customers as much as I've learned from our engineers. And I mean, many of you might know our mission at Microsoft is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So accessibility is right in line with our mission. We want to empower every person in every context. And what I'm going to walk you through today is how our technologies in Microsoft 365, which include Office 365 and Windows 10, help people with disabilities. Many people talk about accessibility in terms of helping people with disabilities be more productive, but today we're going to touch on a slightly different aspect, helping content communicators engage people with disabilities. So it's not about the person with disability changing something, but it's about you as a content communicator, personalizing the way you engage diverse learners, communicate to a diverse audience. So think about your audience having maybe a visual impairment like color blindness, low vision, or blindness. Think about the audience that might have a hearing impairment like being deaf or hard of hearing. Think about the audience that might have a learning disability like dyslexia. So we're going to look at these particular disabilities and ways we can communicate more effectively with a diverse audience. It's not just about the people, it's also the organizations that they're part of. So we're going to think about how when we send content over to a classroom, 7 in 10 classrooms in the US have students with special needs, for example. And 1 in 3 households in the US have a person with disability. So we want to send the same communications content to appeal to all learners, to appeal to all audiences. And that's really the crux of what we're talking about today. Does that sound like a good agenda?
I think that if you can squeeze all that in, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm so excited to hear about everything. I mean, you just showed me some of the things that you were going to cover today, and I just think it's absolutely amazing. And just having it so accessible, there's no excuse not to be inclusive. And I know we're obviously in the UK, but from my experience through our community, there are so many barriers for neurodivergent people, whether you are in primary, secondary, FE, HE, and then in the employment sector. There just seems to be so many barriers. A lot of employers, maybe the concept of disability and inclusion is a foreign language to them, but actually having sessions like this and access to this technology, it just makes it so much more helpful and accessible to so many people. So yeah, brilliant. I'm really looking forward to finding out more.
So let's talk about the language of disability. I think you hit on something really important. The way ideally we want the world to be designed is nobody should have to ask for access. It should just be there. This quote comes from Marlee Matlin, who's an Academy Award-winning actress who happens to be deaf. And the irony is sometimes she'll win awards, go to award shows, and the shows won't have captions, so she can't follow what's happening in the award show. So really, nobody should have to raise their hand and say, I can't hear, can you give captions? Or I can't see, can you give me an alternate format? We want to design for the diversity of our audience and make sure people feel included, feel like they're able to participate without having to ask. A teacher once told me a student would rather go without than stand out. They're not going to raise their hand and admit that they need something special. So as much as we're designing for inclusion, the more successful we're going to be. And I think one thing that really helps is reframing disability. The World Health Organization has actually redefined disability to be about the mismatch in human interactions. That puts designers as responsible for ensuring this mismatch doesn't happen. And all of us are designers of our content and communication. If you write emails, if you run meetings, if you create documents, you are in charge of making sure you're meeting the need of your audience. And that's what we want to talk about today. So by designing to meet the needs of people with disabilities, you're going to actually be more successful in engaging a wider audience, not just people with permanent disabilities like an upper arm loss, but also people with temporary conditions like an arm strain, or someone in a situation like a disability, for example, can't use their arms because they're carrying a child. So think about the audience I mentioned earlier who could be blind. The temporary condition could be that someone's gone for an eye exam and had their eyes dilated so they can't see clearly for a few hours. And the situational context could be someone's dialing into a meeting using the phone, so they can't see the slides, so they can't see who's in the room. So you want to describe everything that's going on in the room or in the slides verbally. So we're going to talk about how Office 365 can help you do this. And we're going to walk through 3 examples. We're going to teach you how to make audio content accessible, and that's crucial for someone with a visual impairment. We're going to teach you how to make visuals accessible, and that's crucial for someone with a visual impairment. Sorry, the audio accessibility is for someone with a hearing impairment. And finally, we'll show you how to make text accessible, and that's important for anyone with a print disability, for example, dyslexia. So let's dive right into it. For audio accessibility, I'm going to show you 3 things. How can you add captions to any video you insert in PowerPoint or Sway? How can you actually get automatic captions? And that's what I'm doing up here right now, where you're seeing these live subtitles. I'm using a free add-in called Presentation Translator, and I'm going to show you the link where you can download that. And then finally, if you upload your videos to an internal sharing site, for example, Microsoft Stream, you get these same automatic captions in that too. So let's dive right in. First, I'm going to show you how you can insert a video in PowerPoint and add captions. So here's, for example, a video I'm going to insert in this slide. I'm going to insert video. Just move this so I'm not blocking my screen. I'm going to insert a video from my PC. And then let's insert Veronica's story. So now what you can do when you select the video, right here in playback, you can insert a captions file. Most professional videos, you should request the person who produced the video to give you a caption file with it. And then once you have that, you can just insert it right using the .vtt format for PowerPoint for PCs. So you can insert it to go along with your PowerPoint video. And then when you hit press play, I'm just going to mute it. You'll be able to have the captions show up right alongside the video. So here she's talking about her journey in university and the subtitles are showing. So it's pretty simple, right in PowerPoint for video. When you insert the video, you go to playback and you insert the captions file. Now this assumes you have the caption file already, and otherwise you'll have to create it yourself or have the person who made the video create it. The other thing I mentioned is if you're presenting live, for live audio, we have this thing called Start Subtitles. It shows up if you've installed the Presentation Translator add-in. The way you can do that is go to aka.ms/prtr. Just going to show you that it takes you to this thing where you can download this add-in for PowerPoint. It works for older versions of PowerPoint as well, not just the latest Office 365 PowerPoint. And what it does is it captions everything I'm saying in real time. And it lets the audience pick the language they want to see the subtitles in. So going back over here to this, I've installed it already from aka.ms/prtr. And then when I turn it on, I'm going to be speaking English, and if you wanted to see the subtitles in a different language, for example, if your audience predominantly speaks a different language, you can have them displayed in a different language. You can even train it to see the content of your slides in speaker notes to improve the accuracy. And to further improve accuracy, you can have a wireless mic plugged in, so it takes the audio from the mic. You can control things like where the subtitles show up, above or below the slides, whether you want the audience to be able to join the conversation. And then when you hit start, that's what I've been doing over here. All the subtitles show up top. And you can do things like have the audience join the conversation. So there's a few settings you can control over here. You can mute, unmute. The audience can type this link in, translate.it/IQCJY, and they can see captions in their own preferred language. So it's a cost-effective solution. It's free, and it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty darn good. It's using our cloud services, so over time it gets better. I can see I have a question. Oh, it's saying captions vanished. It's because I toggled over to a different slide. That's something. If I escape, the captions wouldn't vanish. Right now I'm in PowerPoint slideshow mode. That's why it's showing the way it is. The same technology I mentioned is also now available in Microsoft Stream. So just for those of you who don't know, Stream is a video sharing app. Within Microsoft, for example, I can share videos with other people in Microsoft. And the minute I upload the video, what it does is it automatically generates a transcript, and that transcript is searchable. It also does things like identify the faces in the video, so I can skip to the part where a certain person is speaking. So this is an example of the captions that are crucial for people with hearing impairments, but beneficial for everyone. For example, if I just wanted to search and skip to a certain section of this video, I could search by keyword and then play that part of the video. So it's a neat benefit. I get captions for free, and I'm able to search the transcript. So it's part of the Microsoft Stream service right now in English and Spanish. So those are 3 quick tricks to help make audio more accessible by adding captions to videos, live captions as you present, and then two videos that are shared via Stream. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. That's a good point. The captions should not vanish, so I'll make an effort to keep them running up here all the time.
I was going to say as well, after this webinar as well, we will transcribe the session and make sure that there's a fully captioned video available on YouTube. If you visit the Operation Diversity YouTube channel, you'll be able to find it there after the session as well.
Also, if you join using your mobile phone or web, translate.it/IQCJY, you can see the captions on your phone or web using your preferred language. So as I move between screens, you can still follow along using the web. So next, I'm going to move on to some examples of visual accessibility. An example I like to tell people is, a visual can speak 1,000 words, but not to someone who's blind unless you describe the visual. So what do I mean by that? How many of you have heard of something called alternative text? I'm going to show you how to access alternative text. Just give me a sec because I want the captions to reappear. So I'm going to have to exit slideshow mode. Okay, I'm not able to exit slideshow, but whoever needs captions, please go to translate.it/IQCJY, and you should be able to see the captions show up. So it's going to give you an example of visual accessibility. Going back to this slide right here. For example, if I want to communicate using pictures, I can easily insert pictures right into PowerPoint. And here I'm going to insert, for example, a bunch of images And one of the things that's pretty neat about PowerPoint, recent versions, is that the computer can automatically caption my images for me. So in this example right here, the computer has figured out that this is an image of an open computer sitting on a table. And if I click on the description, it actually asks me, how would I describe this object and its context to someone who's blind? So it's telling me I should add 1 to 2 sentences. And it's actually added the sentences for me because this is an image that the computer was able to recognize with high confidence. If I want to alter the description, I can type right here. It's an open computer sitting on a table with Skype, because the people in the image are describing Skype. And other examples, for example, this is a group of people sitting at a desk using a computer. It's actually not a group, it's 2 people. So I can edit the descriptions really easily. If I just right click and hit edit all text, that's how I get to open that window. And that's something we all should do as we use visuals to convey meaning. PowerPoint can do it automatically for us for images that it can recognize easily. But certain times in our communications, we use images that have a lot of text and a lot going on. So computer vision isn't good enough to recognize complex images. So that dialogue is not going to pop up and label this image. I have to do it myself. So I'm going to right click, and then I should type what this infographic conveys as my description. So that's a handy trick to make visuals accessible in PowerPoint. The same thing you can do in Word. Just go back to my slide. You can also make visuals accessible in another way by describing what they convey verbally. So a teacher taught me this trick. Right within OneNote, for example, a science teacher in a school for the blind told me that she uses a lot of complex diagrams. And then in addition to adding alt text, what she does is she simply inserts an audio description of the thing. So right within OneNote, for example, you can play this description and it's her describing this image. So that's an alternate way you can describe a visual. You can do the same thing within PowerPoint as well. For example, for this visual, if I want to describe it, it's a new thing in PowerPoint. You can have a recording tab and you can record the slideshow from the current slide, for example. So it's gonna, right now my camera is already being used to record this Zoom, but for example, I can describe this slide using audio and visuals. And then what it does is it embeds whatever I just said right within slides. So when I skip over to slideshow mode, it can play that recording. So if you don't see this recording tab showing up in your PowerPoint, you might want to go to options and customize the ribbon. In customize ribbon, in the main tabs, you can actually checkmark recording if it's hidden for you, and you can play around with inserting audio into your PowerPoints. The other thing I'll say is if the automatic descriptions for images aren't showing up for you, you can turn on Office Intelligence Services because it's using our computer vision algorithms to describe your images. So you want to enable the intelligence services. You can also go to ease of access and toggle on or off. If you want the alt text generated for you, you can turn this on, otherwise you can turn it off. So these are all customizable settings in Office 365. So those were a few examples to make visuals accessible. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions about visual accessibility in the chat window. Okay, none yet, so I'll keep going. I'm then going to move over to text accessibility. So I mentioned someone with a print disability like low vision, dyslexia, or blindness. Paper isn't very conducive to helping them comprehend what's on the paper, unless the paper is in braille or large font. So one of the ways you can go paperless is using this free application called Office Lens. It lets you scan with OCR and then export the paper right into Word or OneNote. It's a free app. It even includes voice guidance. So if you can't see, it tells you move left, move right, move up in the iOS app using VoiceOver. And then once you've scanned it into Office Lens, and export it to OneNote, you can do things like read aloud the paper. So I'm going to show an example of a scan that I sent earlier into OneNote. So this is a page of a book and I sent it over to OneNote. And what I can do from OneNote is this thing called read aloud. So right in view, I can toggle over to immersive reader. And this not only helps me read aloud my text with simultaneous highlighting, but also helps me change the way the text looks. For example, if I want to increase the text size, and then it can even change the background. That helps some people with learning disabilities. It has a special font that has increased spacing. It can even do things like highlight parts of speech, break words into syllables, if I'm learning the language, and that kind of thing is helpful. And the last neat thing it can do is focus to a few lines at a time. So now I can kind of, you can't hear it, but what it's doing is reading aloud whatever is happening with simultaneous highlighting. And I can, of course, change the voice, male, female. I can change the speed of the voice. So this is one way I can make paper content accessible by exporting from Office Lens into OneNote. Office Lens on iPhone can also have this read aloud setting because we've built some of these immersive reader capabilities right into Office Lens for iOS. So if I didn't want to export it to OneNote and access it later, I can have it read aloud just from Office Lens directly. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions about Office Lens or OneNote. Okay. Sarah's just explaining that print disability includes eye strain and Erlen syndrome. So we've kind of shipped these capabilities a few months and in some cases even a few years ago. What is the kind of response we're seeing with them? And that's what I want to show you some examples of people using them today in the real world. There's a neat story of a school in New South Wales where a student with a visual impairment was able to do group work more easily because his teachers were creating accessible content. They were using things like the accessibility checker. And then he was able to use Office Lens and the immersive reader to read more effectively. Other examples, I'll just flip back to a few. There's an example of a school in Bellevue that's engaging a diverse parent community. The parents are not native English speakers. They speak many different languages. So in a parent-teacher meeting, they're using presentation translator and having captions turned on. So not just the parent with a hearing impairment, but also the parents who don't speak English are able to follow along. So some great use of these technologies already. And I'm eager to see what you all do with them once you get your hands on them. So I showed you a few basic ways to make text, audio, and visuals accessible. Now I'm going to show you some more technologies that are for multimedia in general. And one of the things you're going to find most useful is this thing called accessibility checker. Just going to move my captions up here. So accessibility checker is right within the review tab next to spell check. It's available in all Office applications where you create content. So Office for PCs, Office for Mac, Office Online, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Visio, Sway, OneNote, Outlook, all of them. And what it does is it finds common errors in your document that might create issues for people with disabilities who are trying to access your content. And it kind of walks you through the process of why to fix something and how to fix it. So it's a great way to learn how to make content accessible if you don't know already. And it's right there next to spell checks. So whenever you're ready to share your content, if you're running spell check, you're reminded to run accessibility check. One of the other things you do when you share content is you perhaps email people. So I'm going to show you how the accessibility checker is also integrated right into email. So this is an example of an email that I'm sending to my friend Georgia. And one of the things Georgia has done is turned on this mail tip that reminds anyone emailing her, Georgia prefers accessible content, check for accessibility issues. And right from within Outlook web app, I'm able to run this accessibility checker and realize that, hey, my objects must be in line and they must have alt text. So I'm able to fix it by inserting alt text for the image right by clicking a fix it button. So both it's reminding me to check for accessibility issues and it's teaching me how to fix this. So if you want to remind more people to communicate inclusively, you might want to turn this mail tip on yourself. So how do you do that? Right from within settings in Outlook web app, you want to go to mail and you want to go to general and you want to go to accessibility. So then you can say ask senders to send content that's accessible. And I've done this and I'm kind of helping people learn about the accessibility checker this way. Over time, of course, we want to bring this to more surfaces. Right now, it's just an Outlook web app, but over time, we want to bring it to more applications. So going back to, we covered accessibility checker and email accessibility. I also want to make you aware that as you create new content, you can actually get started on the right foot using something called accessible templates. So a simple search in PowerPoint, Word, Excel for the word accessible shows you templates that Microsoft has made accessible. And that means these have sufficient font size, color contrast. So you don't have to worry about the format. We've taken care of that for you. And you can just operate within the confines of this template and you will be okay. So how do I know you'll be okay? If you switch over to the slide outline view, you can get a gist of what's in this template. There's always a title on every slide and then there's content within this. Titles are really important because you and I, if we can see, we visually navigate a slide using, for example, we can just visually scan it and we get the gist of it. But someone who's blind, to scan the slide, they scan by title and then they skip to the title that sounds interesting and then drill in by section. So it's really important to follow this type of common structure by having titles on every slide. The same thing you can do for a Word document. For example, this is a Word document that's pretty dull looking, but I want to make sure I add structure to it. So the way I want to do that is by using these built-in headings and styles in Word. So you just select your title and then you start having that hierarchy. There's deforestation, there's things you can do, there's some ideas, there's why it matters. So all of the different sections, you want to add title, so you have some structure to your text. And then I'll show you what's the added bonus of having structure. Later, when you want to insert a table of contents, you can automatically do that because you've added structure. So now Word knows that this paper has a section on deforestation, what you can do, and things like that. And the other thing having structure does for you is you can then reorder certain sections just by dragging and dropping from the navigation pane. So not only does this help someone who's blind skip and drill into the section that matters, it just helps everyone understand the structure of your content and reorganize, for example, if you're the author and you want to move sections around. So great bonus of accessibility, just helping make content better for everyone. I'm going to show you this idea of adding structure to your content, how it helps you in other applications as well. And specifically, I'm going to show you an application called Sway, which is built with structure in mind. But before I do that, I'll just check if anyone has questions about what I covered so far. No questions yet. So I'm going to assume you're all following this excellently, and I'm doing a great job of communicating. Okay, let's show you Sway. So Sway is one of the applications. It's a web app as well as available on iPhone, Android. It helps you create engaging content. For example, newsletters. We've even created a Sway of all of our accessibility features on Office 365 and Windows 10 that we're sharing with customers. The neat thing about Sway is it has structure built in. So as you create a sway, for example, this sway about Microsoft accessibility features, you're forced to add and content like headings, text, images. You can even embed videos. So it's a great way to make blogs, for example. So once you're done creating that structure, you can do something called accessibility checker, similar to what I showed you in PowerPoint. It walks you through each of the sections of your sway that might cause accessibility issues and reminds you, for example, to review alternative text for any images. And here I've already described the image. It's a man with sunglasses, smiling, sitting on a beanbag in a modern office setting. But if the image wasn't conveying any meaning and it was just there for decoration, I can mark the image as decorative. So I can keep going through this way and doing this for all of the images and reviewing hyperlinks, for example. And then once I'm done, I'm ready to kind of share my sway. You can share it with people in your organizations. You can share it publicly. You can get embed code if you wanted to embed it in a blog or a website. And then what the audience sees is this really engaging surface that kind of reflows as you change the size of your screen. So if you're seeing it on a mobile screen, it will automatically reflow within the sections. And you can see alternative text for each of the images. So what's neat about Sway is there's also an accessibility view built in, which helps screen reader users use this way because it loads everything in one go rather than loading it a frame at a time. So the screen reader can do the things like skip heading and drill into the section of their choice. So it's inclusively designed. You can make an accessible sway, and then your audience can customize the way it loads for them. If they're using assistive technologies, they can switch to this accessibility view. So it's a neat way to communicate more inclusively, and technology is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you because it's breaking it into structure. It's reminding you to add alternative text, for example. So I showed you tons of examples of ways you can communicate more engagingly. And this is another story from a student who's already using this in her classes. She's actually reminding her professors to use accessibility checker. She has low vision. She can't read less than font size 22. So she finds it really helpful if her professors remember to follow accessibility best practices. And she's saying, it only takes a minute, so why wouldn't you do it? I showed you different ways as communicators we can make our content more inclusive. I also wanted to remind you that in earlier webinars, we covered ways a person with disability can customize the way they create and communicate. So we, in previous webinars, covered free applications like Seeing AI that narrates the world around you, or things like learning tools, which I also showed briefly here, that read aloud text with simultaneous highlighting, break words into syllables, help a person with dyslexia read more effectively. We also have other applications that help you communicate with your voice. For example, if you're not able to type or you prefer to speak instead of write. So we have things like dictation built into Word and a free add-in called dictate.ms that lets you create with your voice. We have things like read aloud built into most mainstream applications. For example, right here in the review tab, next to spell check, you can have your document read aloud, and that helps you find errors in your document. You can customize the reading speed, the reading voice, and then once you find errors in your document, you can actually use our built-in spelling checker called editor to fix those errors. What we've done with editor is actually show you synonyms alongside suggestions and give you the option to have the synonyms and suggestions read aloud. So if you know how a word sounds but don't know how it's spelled, you can pick the right word. Or if you know the meaning but all of the suggestions are really similar, you can look at the synonyms to understand which is the right word. We've trained the engine to actually catch errors that are really far off from the original word, because we know people with dysgraphia, dyslexia spell in many different ways. So you'll see suggestions even when the word is really far off from the original word. And I'll also call out that this is not just a spelling checker, it actually makes you a better writer. It reminds you, for example, to use active voice instead of passive voice. It has things like clarity and conciseness checks. You can customize all of these options. So one of the neat options I like to remind people is inclusive language. So if, for example, you're typing things like disabled person instead of person with disability, it can catch that and remind you, hey, you might want to use person first language. Or if you have a gender bias and you're typing things like policeman instead of police person, it can catch that as well. So totally customizable, right from options. You can turn on whichever settings work for you and your organizations, and it'll flag them using these single dotted lines or blue dash or red squiggly, which we're all familiar with, which is spelling. So that's what editor is. It's new with Office 365. So that's a lot we covered, and I'm going to point you to a few free trainings if you want to dive deeper. aka.ms/accessible content training is where we've got special education teachers teaching other teachers how to create accessible content for their classrooms. We also have trainings to help you personalize your PC if you're a student with disability. education.microsoft.com/gettrained/accessibility. And we have a training on creating digitally inclusive learning for school leaders, aka.ms/achievement for all. Covered a lot of free tools today. Office 365 is free for students and teachers, right from aka.ms/office education. If you have a .edu email address, you can get started and access Office 365 today. I showed you presentation translator, which is what I'm using to have these live subtitles. aka.ms/translator for education tells you more about presentation translator. I showed you accessible templates, so you can get started on the right foot. aka.ms/accessible templates has all of the templates that Microsoft has made accessible. Showed you ways you can go paperless using Office Lens. So aka.ms/Office Lens is where you can get Office Lens. And finally showed you ways you can have your content read aloud to you with simultaneous highlighting. And you can get that for free for OneNote using onenote.com/learning tools. It's also built into Office 365. So if you get Office 365, it's right there within Word. For example, in the View tab, you can turn on learning tools. Right, also within the Review tab, you can do things like read aloud. So a lot of these functionalities are built in, but if you don't have Office 365, you can get started from onenote.com/learning tools.
Hiya. Honestly, I feel like I need to take a day off work so that I can sit and actually just go in and play with everything. It was really, really helpful. I'm just checking, does anybody have any questions about what Malavika's covered already? I don't have any on the Facebook page. Which is your favourite feature, like that you've talked about today? Do you use these yourself?
I actually love read aloud because in marketing, I have to proofread a lot of content and I create a lot of articles, presentations, and it really helps me find errors in my own writing. So I can get through 2,500 word essays in like few minutes because I play it at a really high speed, and I can quickly find errors in my writing.
Yeah, it's quite handy. I think that a lot of text-to-speech software that's out there, it is quite expensive, and I only had access to it for the very first time whilst I was at university. But it's such a useful thing, and I know that a lot of children from our community group on Facebook, a lot of their parents have been posting about them writing stories, and just literally they got off the computer and they're like playing around with all of these features. So it's just been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
That's great. Is there anyone else that's joining us on Zoom? If you have any questions, please just pop them in the chat box. If you are watching this on Catch Up and you have any questions, the team at Microsoft, we have actually another 2 videos that go alongside this webinar series. They are already available on the Operation Diversity YouTube channel, and the team at Microsoft, they have been answering questions. So if you are watching this on Catch Up and you do have any questions about any of the features, then pop a comment underneath the video on the YouTube channel and I will make sure that you get an answer to your question. Do you think, is there anything else you think that you would like to add?
Yeah, so anytime people have a question, there's also the option to call or chat with our disability answer desk. aka.ms/accessibility support is the way to get their contact information. They're trained in assistive technologies and accessibility issues. You can phone, chat, or in the US, use American Sign Language on a video phone to get in touch with them. We can also get suggestions in our user voice forum, aka.ms/accessibility feedback. The community gives us ideas to improve our products, and we actually look at how many people are voting on different ideas to figure out where to invest next. So the question is whether speech recognition can actually learn from someone's speech. Today, the thing that subtitles, for example, it can learn from the content of your slides, but it can't learn from your speech. But there are pilots going on where directly people are using the cognitive services that are powering this thing to try to customize to people's speech patterns. But I don't think we have anything publicly available for that. I know there are pilots going on.
So you were saying that if you have an education email address, you can access it free today. This is something that we talked about after Mike's webinar, which was the reading and writing tools webinar. How much does it cost normally if you are in employment? How much does it cost if you're just a neurodivergent adult that wants to tap into these features?
Okay, so let's dig right into that. First, I said Office 365 is free for students and teachers, and that includes tons of our online applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint online. And some schools give teachers and students the option to download the PC and Mac applications as well. So it varies from school to school. When you kind of type in your email address and get started, you'll see in some cases, for example, in this school's case, you see this button here to install the Office applications because this school is offering the option to install. If you're not in a school, you're just going to go to office.com, for example, and then see different options for yourself. There's different packages available for home, for business. The online applications in general tend to be free. And then people buy subscription to get their access to the PC and Mac applications. There are also tons of free iPhone applications. Then I covered tons of add-ins. So the presentation translator add-in is free. You can just download it from this website, and it works with older versions of PowerPoint. So if your PC already has an older version of PowerPoint, it should be compatible with that. I mentioned Office Lens. That's another free application. If you get it on your iPhone, it works well with VoiceOver. I mentioned Seeing AI. It's another free application. You can get it from your iPhone. It will narrate the world around you. And that's super useful for someone with a visual impairment because it can read documents out loud. It can scan barcode of products and tell you more about the product. It can describe who's in front of you.
Are you that one that you were just showing, that the lens, are you able to just show us quickly? Because I think last time we touched on it, but we didn't actually get to see it in action. Because I know on the mobile phone, you can literally point it and it will tell you what it is, isn't it? It will take an image and tell you what it is.
Yeah, sure. Let me just see if I have a video available because it's best demoed.
From what I've heard of Office Lens, it will give you hours and hours of entertainment just trying to figure it out, but it's supposed to have some really, really great features.
So here it's kind of saying move down, move up, move left. It's finding the edges of the paper and taking a picture of the paper. And here it's showing me a few options once it's taken the picture. I can send it to OneNote, I can save it in OneDrive, I can send it to Word and then make it an editable document. Or I can have it read aloud from my phone, which is the immersive reader. And here what it's doing is it's reading aloud with simultaneous highlighting, and I can do things like adjust the text size and change the speed at which it's reading aloud. So that's Office Lens on an iPhone with immersive reader. If you don't have an iPhone and you just have Android or Windows, for example, it'll still give you these other options. It just won't give you immersive reader, but we're working on bringing immersive reader to the Android version.
And what is it like? I'm just thinking, because obviously C-Reader pens, we stock those Operation Diversity. They're quite popular, but they have limitation in terms of the font and the, like, whether they can scan handwriting. Are there any limitations in terms of font with using the Office Lens if you were trying to read a book or a journal or some sort of printout?
I've heard really good things. It can do things like column recognition. So if it's a page of a book with 2 columns, it can figure out columns. It can do orientation recognition. So if you're scanning it upside down, it turns it around and makes it forward. I've heard good things about handwriting recognition too. But what I would say is, if the student has low vision or blindness, seeing AI might be a better experience. It's designed by our engineers who were blind, and what they did is, you don't even have to take a picture. You just have your camera in short text mode, and the minute it sees short text, it starts reading out the text to you. So it's designed for people who are blind, and considering the fact that taking images is really hard if you're blind. So it doesn't even tell you to move. It just finds whatever's in the scene of vision.
So if you were out and had a menu or something like that, you could literally just hold it and scan.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It now does handwriting recognition as well. So a parent who's blind was telling me that they're training their kids to write neatly, and they're saying the bar for good handwriting is if AI can recognize your handwriting.
It might be pushed to its limits with my handwriting.
But it's really easy to play around with it because it's free to install, and then you can just turn on any of these modes. And for example, my favorite demo is to kind of take a picture of a person, and it guesses the person's age, emotion, gender. So if it's a child, it makes you younger. You can even train it to remember the person. So if you save the person's name, next time the person comes in the view, it tells you so and so has walked in. So it lets you participate more in these type of social interactions by telling you what's your audience's reaction or who's even present.
I can just see everyone in our community running off to, so if you do try this out, make sure that you pop a comment on our Facebook, on the Operation Diversity Facebook page, and just let us know any of these features, if you've tried them out, how you found them, if they were helpful. If you want to share any work that you complete with it, just let us know. Thank you so much. I didn't even know that you could do these things. It's just so amazing.
One of the other things that many people don't know, if you have Windows 10 in the Edge browser, you can just right click and start reading aloud. So it can read aloud web pages, it can read EPUB, PDF. So right from your web browser, you have now speech to text with different speeds and different voices.
That's amazing.
Simple right click. And the last add-in I mentioned was dictate.ms. So if you have Office 365, you have dictation built in. But if you have older versions of Office, you can actually download this add-in. And what this one does is it helps you type with your voice. So right here, for example, if I have it built in, it shows up here in the Home tab. But install the add-in, it shows up as a separate ribbon. Everything I say will be transcribed as I speak. So I can speak and it will type. New line. It can even do simple commands and automatically punctuate. So that's amazing. Another application of AI that's just typing as I speak, and it can translate on the fly.
Is this available as an app? Because I know a lot of the features that we're finding, you can get them on desktop, but when they're on the app, the features are slightly limited.
This works with the Office applications on your PC, like Word and Outlook.
But not on an Office app.
Yeah, it's the apps. So for example, this is my Word, and I've installed the Dictate add-in.
Okay.
So it kind of has a new ribbon right next to View.
So Mary's asking, can you use Office Lens on a laptop?
Yeah, you can. The only pieces that rely on the iPhone technology are if you're blind and you want the guidance to move left, move right, move up as you take the picture, that's only on the iPhone. And if you want immersive reader, in Office Lens, right now it's only on the iPhone. But if you just use the Windows Office Lens to export and you kind of export over to something like this, you can use read aloud from OneNote or Word.
Tess has made a comment on the Facebook page, and she's saying, you always hear that dyslexics have bad handwriting, but hers was always open and neat. And I just wanted to say that it's completely typical for each and every dyslexic to have their own unique profile. No two dyslexics will share the same level or combination of strengths or difficulties. So for me, handwriting really is an issue. It physically hurts me when I write too much, and because I've not written for so long and relied on text, now my handwriting has deteriorated greatly, whereas other dyslexics like yourself won't have an issue with handwriting at all. And Heidi's asked, I have a student with degraded speech. Can the speech recognition learn his errors and compensate for them?
Yeah, that's the part where I was saying today, the speech recognition can learn from the content of the slides, but it can't learn from the person's speech patterns. There are pilots going on where we're trying to train it for example, someone who's deaf, hard of hearing might have a deaf accent. So we're trying to train the speech engine to recognize their speech pattern.
And does it keep a list? I know Global Autocorrect from Lexible, for example, it's very intelligent software because it automatically changes the spelling as the user is writing without interrupting the thought process. And it actually keeps a list of the most frequently misspelt words. Does your software do that as well, so that the user is able to actually download that list and know what areas that they need to work on?
Yeah, let me show you actually how the speech recognition works. Let me see if I have a GIF to show here. Let's just sort by GIF and okay. So this is the pieces of translator today. It's going to take speech as an input. It then does automatic speech recognition. It then figures out the context of the word. For example, HERE is actually HEAR. It removes duplicates, it changes based on the context of the sentence. And then it's able to actually translate from text to text. So each part of the sentence translates. And then it kind of can output based on text, or it can read aloud. So it's not just speech to text. It's actually much more nuanced than that. It's understanding the context of your sentence. It's then
operating between the keyboard and the actual disk underneath.
So this technology is built into many parts of Office. So like right now, when I was showing you the dictation add-in, it was understanding everything I'm typing and then changing what was being typed based on the context of the sentence. And then the same technology is also built into Skype. So right from Skype for Windows 10, if you call someone, it can transcribe your call and it can read aloud what's being said in a different language. So if you're calling someone who speaks Chinese and you don't speak Chinese, you both can communicate with each other.
Yeah, so Tessa was just saying she could never get speech programs to work for her, and she got frustrated and gave up. I think that a lot of the assistive technology that's available, especially earlier versions, I know whilst I was at university I was using Dragon version 12, and that was quite clunky and made a lot of errors, and I just get frustrated and ended up not using most of it. But from the feedback that we've had from people since the beginning of this webinar series that have tried these features, it's been absolutely immense. So just because you've not had much success with the speech software that you've been using before, then give it a go. And if you get stuck, then message us on our Facebook page and we'll see if we can help.
And one of the major differences from before, I'll say, is that these are now cloud powered. So they are able to improve because they're trained on large sets of data, and the more people use them, the better they get. So previously, maybe your software was installed on your PC and it wasn't artificially intelligent. It wasn't getting better with time. But these are based on cloud services. So they get better with time, and they've been trained on very diverse large sets of data.
I was saying that, there seems to be an echo. I don't know why it's echoing, it's distracting.
Is it echoing from my side?
No. I'm going to stop talking because it's going to throw me.
Okay, so I know we covered a lot, but I would say we have a very active Twitter presence on MSFT Enable. So if you have a good experience, just tweet at us, let us know. And if you have a question, I'd say Disability Answer Desk is the best way to go. But Twitter is also great for just knowing what's happening. We always tweet news, and as things change every month with Office and every 6 months with Windows, it's a neat way to stay up to date. I hope you have a good experience trying these technologies out, and I'm also available on Twitter if you have any questions or feedback.
Lovely. Oh, can you just close that chat box, please, Malavika? There we go. Yeah, so thank you, Malavika, for joining us tonight. It was so insightful, and I know from the comments as well, it was really, really useful to a lot of people. I just wanted to remind you that all 3 of these sessions are available on our YouTube channel. So if you go over to YouTube, subscribe to the Operation Diversity channel, and I mean, we do other sessions as well, so check out that. We have a calendar on our Facebook page where you can see all of our upcoming sessions, and we also have the Operation Diversity community group, which is a huge community on Facebook where you can come and find out all sorts of information about all sorts of special educational needs, or neurodivergent differences as we prefer to call them. It's an amazing group where we support children, adults, parents, carers, educators, employers and other professionals. So head over there if you need any support with any aspect of SEN. And that's it. I will leave you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, Malavika, and everyone as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.